1 minute, Ed.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, this is the May 2nd, 2022 regular meeting of the Board of Estimate and Taxation. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Mayor Rilling,
Here.
Mr. Abrams,
Here.
Mr. Camacho,
Here.
Mr. Frere,
Here.
Mr. Gilleret,
Here.
Mr. Casimius. Mr. Casimius. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5
We have a quorum.
attendees.
All right. Thank you, Madam Clerk. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. Would anyone like to move that item?
I'll move the item.
All right, the mayor's moved the item. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes? Are there any additions, deletions, etc.? No? Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes of the April 4, 2022 meeting of the Board of Estimate and Taxation signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the motion carries and the minutes are approved. The next item on the agenda is a special appropriations matter on page 7.
So
Someone
moved.
move the item?
So
It's been
moved.
It's been moved. All right. Madam Clerk, would you mind reading the proposed resolution?
Boris, special appropriations agenda advertised items FY fiscal year 2021 to 2022. Resolved that a sum not to exceed 144,000 be and the same is hereby transferred from contingency to the Corporation Council Department to pay for other professional services from account noted to account noted.
Okay. Is there anyone here from the Corporations Council or the Finance Department that wishes to comment on that item? No, no one here from Corporation from.
Yes,
Here.
Oh, there's Mario. Okay.
good evening, everyone. Mario Capola, Corporation Counsel. With regard, well, first of all, there was a letter provided to the Board of Estimate and Taxation citing the reasons why we made the request. I think it's self-explanatory. However, I am here to answer any questions that you may have. One thing I just wanted to highlight for you is that this was, as precise of a request as we could make. We didn't ask for significantly more money than we thought we needed for the remainder of the fiscal year. I'm hoping that if you grant this additional amount of 144, that will be enough to pay all the bills that we have between now and the end of the fiscal year. But I just wanted the board to understand that these costs are really outside of our control in these, for example, in the tax appeal cases, as to when there are certain deadlines with the court and what fees we incur, for example, with appraisers as a result. So we've, I think, done our best job here to come up with the most conservative estimate. Do you have any questions for me, Mr. Chairman, or anyone else on the board?
I don't. Does anyone have any questions?
I have one question.
Ed, this is Troy. Okay.
I have one question, Mario. On the in your letter, you comment that we continue to incur significant costs involving Milligan and the POCO redevelopment issues. Is that on? I mean, I understand it's ongoing, but is there an end in sight in this? It seems like this has been going on for quite a while.
Yes. The answer is yes. First of all, the case that he filed against redevelopment agency, which also initially included the city. It's a long story. We had gotten out of it, but still been heavily involved and incurred costs resulting from the case, even after we were no longer technically a party. The court ruled in favor of the redevelopment agency on a motion for summary judgment. And quite frankly, it's pretty extraordinary for a case of that significance and with that many, so many facts, that the court found that with the facts that were not in dispute, as a matter of law, judgment should be rendered in favor of the redevelopment of the public parties. And that's exactly what happened in that one significant case.
If I can just interject for a second, probably, if I'm not mistaken, there may be some press people on, so we can only be limited to certain discussions regarding an ongoing lawsuit. And
Yes,
I know was that.
Yeah, and that was a public decision rendered by Judge Ozales of the complex lit docket within the last few weeks. With regard to the other case, we are currently scheduled for trial in September. We anticipate that that may get extended to a later date, but we anticipate that case being resolved within the next year, possibly that case being resolved before the end of this calendar year. So there is an end in sight with regard to the litigation. And, so far, every decision from the court has been, every substantial decision has been in our favor. And so it's been positive.
Mr. Capola, I also believe there's a cap on our responsibility, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, Mayor. With regard to litigation costs, Shipman and Goodwin had agreed a while ago to a not to exceed cap of, I think, and we have, I think, a few $100,000 left before we hit that cap number. But with regard to legal fees, there is a cap. And so that's something that the finance department is aware of with regard to our budgeting. With regard to third-party costs, expert witness and transcript costs, et cetera, there's no cap on that, but there's only so much you're going to incur for costs in a single case for those things. So the answer is, Mr. Frere, there is an end in sight for the case, or the cases, but also there is a cap on how much we could really incur for fees and costs in the litigation as well.
Because the more I read about this and the more, every time it seems that I turn around that he's suing us again.
I'm getting a lot of feedback, some background. I don't know if everybody who's not speaking could mute. So
what I was going to say, it's almost getting to the point where a lot of these cases are almost frivolous, and it's winding up costing us money. Okay, but if the end is near or in sight, as you say, that's encouraging. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Mario, this is Troy. Quick question. How many people are you talking about here for your increase? And is it temporary people or are they talking permanent people, first of all?
Well, with regard to this specific request, it's for funds for our account so that we could pay for fees and costs that we incur. For the most part, it is, well, I shouldn't say, I was going to say for the most part, it's the appraisal, the costs we're incurring and the tax appeals. But there is some outside counsel costs that we're incurring as well. Quite frankly, for a municipality the size of Norwalk, in comparison to other similarly sized communities in Connecticut, our budget for outside counsel has been significantly less probably than other communities. We're at a point where we've had more costs for outside counsel than we've had in the past at this time because of the Milligan litigation, but also because of some of the property tax assessment appeals where the assistant corporation counsel, Brian McCann, left the city in September. We've had an opening for that position for about 4 to 6 months, and it's been posted 2 or 3 times. And we have not been able to fill that position with somebody who's got the requisite experience. So we've been, your corporation counsel has been rolling up his sleeves and taking on probably more casework than one would expect your corporation counsel on a part-time basis to do, including not seeing his kids as I'm staying late tonight working on a tax appeal. That happens to be an area of specialty for me, so I'm able to take on more of the burden, I think, than other corporation counsels in the state of Connecticut, quite frankly. But then in addition to, I'm only one person, so in addition to me, we have been incurring some costs with outside counsel there as well. But quite frankly, that's also offset by the fact that we're not paying the salary for the position that's open as well.
Yeah, I was going to mention that there should be a surplus in the regular wage account.
Which, by the way, that was part of the request, was offset by that. So I think the request was initially 180, and then it was offset by that amount that we anticipated for the additional money in the wage account. And I'll just tell you that, quite frankly, I am taking on a lot of the tax appeal work, and trying to do it not only here at City Hall, but on my own, my other office, just trying to pitch in and get it done. It's just based on the current arrangement, I can only do this for so long. I'm sort of busting at the seams, but we're moving along. So
at some point, Mario, are you going to request a transfer from the regular wage account to?
That's already been done. That was already done. Yeah, that was already done. And so, we're again, that position is vacant, and we anticipate will be vacant for the rest of the fiscal year. And so there was an estimate as to how much would be left, and then that adjustment was already made. We did recently make an appointment to a new corporation counsel. She'll be handling, you may have read that in the paper, she'll be handling more non-litigation work. But we did just recently make a new hire.
Great. Any other questions?
Yeah, Mr. Capola, when is she scheduled to start? I believe in May sometime.
She is scheduled to start on May 31st. And yeah, so she's scheduled to start on May 31st. We had agreed to allow her to give extra time to the city of Bridgeport to assist with the transition there.
So that also for the next month. That also means for the next month there will be additional money in the regular wage account that can be transferred over.
Yes.
Okay.
Mary, what percentage are we completed with the tax assessment appeals? I know these are the larger ones that you're dealing with, but are we?
I'm really proud of the work we've done in this department. We got great results, quite frankly, in the cases that we resolved over the last, I think, 3 years. I would say from a sheer number of cases standpoint, probably my estimate would probably be around 70 to 80% of the cases have been resolved. So a substantial number of them, hundreds of cases in comparison to other communities in Connecticut. I think we're right at the top of the list and I've reminded the tax court of this, of cases resolved in the last 3 years. We may be number one in the state. If I had to guess, I would say we're probably number one. But there are some significant cases remaining, including, for example, so there's, I don't want to go through the examples, but there's some significant properties left that are still at issue. So not as many, the quantity is not as many, but they involve, significant properties.
And then one more question on the POCO situation. It's good to hear the end of the site. So it sounds like the summary judgment is good on one side and the trial is going on. You said maybe starting in September in the fall. We're paralyzed. We can't do anything. Nobody could do anything until the trial is completed as far as any more adjustments to the property or any advancements on the property. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct at all. I think that's a misconception that has been put out in the public domain. Anything to do with the lawsuits with Mr. Milligan, quite frankly, the lawsuits with Mr. Milligan that were filed by the public parties, or the lawsuit that was filed, I should say, singular lawsuit, that does not in any way impede the Wall Street Place project from moving forward with the new developer, McClutchy Group and Citibank. There is a zoning appeal that Mr. Milligan filed of a decision to provide a special permit approval for the revised project that the McClutchies and Citibank had applied for with the commission back a while ago, probably plus minus a year ago. We're waiting, that trial happened, and we're waiting for the court in Stanford to issue a written decision. That was an appeal that Mr. Milligan filed of the approval that the McClutchie Citibank group received for that project. Quite frankly, they could go forward, but that may be part of the delay is the appeal that he filed with zoning. But the other case does not in any way impede the other project from moving forward. Again, a great misconception out there in the public domain.
Thank you for the clarification.
More than happy to do it. Thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, you're on Zoom. You're on mute.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. It seems as if, and I may be wrong, it seems as if the tax appeals this year were much higher. The number was much higher than in the past. I don't know if that's the case. Maybe you can enlighten me, but if so, I'd like to kind of know why, and maybe not now, but in the next couple of weeks, I'd like to know why, and give me an analysis of why you think it may be Tyler Technologies, if they performed their responsibilities in a manner which we expected, or were they somewhat off? Because that seems to be a lot of more tax appeals than there has been in the past.
I could give a quick answer. I'll endeavor to do so in 1 minute, and I could give it.
You got it. I know. Is that a Mario Coppola 1 minute, or is that a regular 1 minute?
It's an Italian 1 minute, so a couple minutes.
Okay.
But I would just say, number one, the revaluation took place in 2018. So when you Mayor, you refer to cases in the last year. I wouldn't say it's cases within the last year, but rather cases that were filed, some of which have been in the last year, but most of which were filed in 2019, 2020 from the 2018 revaluation. One of the reasons there were a lot of cases filed is because, quite frankly, Norwalk is a place that developers want to be in, and there's a lot of investment happening in Norwalk that doesn't happen in other communities in Connecticut. So you've got more high-end significant properties than you did 10 years ago. So, for example, since the mayor's been in office, you've had, I don't know, well over $1 billion probably of new construction, or at least projects that have increased in value, probably over $1 billion. And so, for example, the mall, I mean, went from a very small number to, I don't know, over 500 million between the mall and the anchors. That's being appealed. So I think, to answer your question, Mayor, you've had a lot of growth in the community that, quite frankly, other communities, I think, in Connecticut would be envious of. And one of the things you deal with, quite frankly, with bigger properties is there's a better chance for tax appeal, even because there's just more money at stake, and it makes sense to file an appeal, even just, whereas for smaller properties, it's not worth it as much. So I think the grand list growth is one reason why. And also there was a big increase from 2013 to 2018 on your commercial properties. And so it just led to more appeals. I think the assessors were certainly, I don't want to say aggressive, but they knew where values were in Norwalk, and so they did not undervalue properties on purpose, which sometimes happens in communities. So the bottom line is, I think that part of the reason you have more appeals is that the community's had a lot of success, people who invest here. And so when you have an extra $1 billion of property value, you're going to have more property tax assessment appeals.
But you don't think Tyler Technologies overvalued properties, or that they were in error on a lot of the properties? You think that they valued fairly? Okay.
Yeah, I do. Yes, Mayor. I do. I think that. I think
that's a good answer, since the cases are in litigation still.
Yeah.
Yes, but that is the answer. That's the answer. If we were, by ourselves in my office too, with no camera on us, that is the answer. The answer is yes. For multifamily, I had somebody today, property today, where They were claiming the value was, they have no appraisal, but 25 million. Well, we pushed them hard in discovery, and we have 35 million on the property. And, I've got appraisals that they got for financing that we fought for that say that the property was valued at anywhere between 40 million and 49 million around the time of value. So, do we get it right at 36? According to their own appraisals, I think we did a pretty good job. So again, it's a good problem to have as the city has more major commercial properties of high value. You're going to have more tax appeals, and they're going to take more time to resolve.
Okay, that's good. That's fine. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? The item has been moved. All in favor of the resolution as read by Madam Clerk, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries, and the item the resolution has been adopted. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda, there is no transfer matters on the agenda. We'll move along to other business. First matter on the agenda is approval of the 2021-2022 suspense list. Is Lisa on? There she is. Hi, Lisa.
Good evening.
Good evening.
This is an annual process that the Board of Estimate exercises in accordance with basically oversight responsibilities under Connecticut law.
I'm sorry, Lisa. Just one quick second. The matter hasn't been moved, but we'll just it's being moved now. The mayor's moved the item.
I'll move that.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Lisa. I apologize.
No, that's okay. I apologize. Jumping the gun here.
No, that was my fault for not. But anyway, so proceed.
So we do this as an annual process, and this is usually the time of year that we do it. It is basically a bookkeeping and accounting measure to allow us to more properly, more accurately characterize our outstanding debt. And most of these accounts are usually motor vehicle accounts for which we do not have a valid address. We have continued to report them to the Connecticut State Department of Motor Vehicles in order to prevent registrants from registering or re-registering any other vehicles if they owe us back taxes. But in some cases, these folks have moved out of state, or they are now leasing vehicles, and we are not able to capture them. By putting it on suspense, it means that we can continue to report to DMV, but if we don't have a valid address, we don't have to continue to try to send bills that keep getting returned, with an eye toward conserving our resources and saving printing and postage costs. The other significant portion of this is business personal property taxes where the businesses are out of business. And unfortunately, last year at this time, I predicted that this would happen. We have a bit of a spike in our business personal property transfers to suspense because the assessor's office was basically carrying some businesses on the grand list and rolling it from one year to the next. It could be because of COVID, they were not able to determine that these businesses were out of business. But this has, quite frankly, been a chronic problem over the years. It continues to be a problem. And you do see a significant increase in the dollar amount of our requested transfer to suspense this year on account of this situation. What generally happens is we turn the account over to, for example, a state marshal, or we go out ourselves to try to collect it, and the business is gone. This is technically, it's a problem too, because taxes are assessed in Connecticut on October 1. They're not billed until the following July. And then if it's more than $100, the following January after that. And a lot can happen in that time. Businesses can come and go. And it's very, very hard to collect business property taxes in general. When the assessor's office rolls it over onto the subsequent year, even though the business isn't there, these bills are not proratable. Like a motor vehicle bill, if you sell a car, you can get a credit. Business personal property, you can't. So if it's on as of October 1st, it's on for the whole year. That's just the way Connecticut law works. It's a little bit of a fluke in the law. But we can't continue to look to these accounts as collectible when they're really not, if the money isn't there. I think you all know me well enough to know that we do try to be very diligent and very professional about not letting back taxes accumulate. But these are accounts that truly are uncollectible. But I need to have your approval before we are able to effect that transfer. It's a matter of public record. It's filed in the town clerk's office. And we have to do it at least once a year. There's a good likelihood that we're going to come back to you again in the fall and ask for a subsequent transfer because we're still investigating a lot of these business personal property accounts. And if the companies are truly gone, we want to get them off the tax rolls because it doesn't make sense to count on this amount of revenue for future years budget, as a revenue item in the future, if the accounts are just not collectible at all. So I tried to explain it as best I can. If I'm perfectly glad to answer any questions or concerns that you have.
Well, once the amounts go to the suspense tax list, is there anything? Is that the end of it, or is there some like a collection agency that we hire or something to see what we can do about recovering some of this?
It's definitely not the end of it. We do have a collection agency, and we also do continue to report to DMV, and we do make suspense collections all the time. So once they are transferred over, we do continue to bring that revenue in. It just doesn't go toward our collection rate for those years because it's been removed as an asset. But we have suspense collections all the time, most usually when an individual returns to the state after a hiatus elsewhere and they return to Connecticut, and we are able to capture them that way, or if the collection agency can catch them.
Gotcha. All right. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Lisa, I had just a quick. I'm sorry, Troy. Go ahead.
Just quick. You mentioned, Lisa, in the past that some of these taxes are employees of the city. I assume that there's probably a low percentage of these that are on these names that I'm looking through or employees. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, we do a wage garnishment twice a year for city and Board of Ed employees. So if there were an employee that we were still able to pursue, we would be pursuing them. It could be that there was a reason why, if an employee filed for federal bankruptcy and received a discharge for certain years, it could be that you would see an employee on here because the taxes were discharged under federal bankruptcy law, which supersedes our state tax collection. But we do a wage garnishment twice a year. There's also some employees that we are not able to pursue. We're not able to pursue part-timers, and we're not able to capture pension payments. But full-time employees that work for the Board of Ed or any of the city departments are subject to wage garnishment.
Thank you for that update. And also, I think that we mentioned it last year. It's nice that you give us the historical numbers over since 2007, but I'd be curious to see what the collection rates are, in the past. Is it, just curious what the numbers would be from a percentage point of view.
Well, we give you our collection rates every month with that spreadsheet that I give you.
No, but I'm talking about these past ones, like last year was 806, 833. These are sent out for collection, right? These are past suspense numbers in your report.
They're not all able to be given to collection because some of them, if it's federal bankruptcy, we cannot pursue it any longer. If it's motor vehicle and it's not bankruptcy, we do turn it over to collection, but I could try to figure it out for you.
So of the last year's 806 that you have here, 806,000, how much do you think as a percentage has been collected through your efforts? Zero?
No, it's not zero, but I don't know how much it is, but I could try to figure it out.
I'd be curious. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Jim?
Yes, Lisa, I had just a real quick question. Could you give me some explanation?
Someone is on the,
I'm still hearing a lot of background noise.
yeah.
Everybody who's not talking should be muted.
Yeah, it's coming from Mr. Jelleret. If he could mute after he speaks, thank you.
Just a quick question. The reasons and the, I guess it's the TP is motor vehicle, private property, and then there's an SM. There's quite a few SMs. I don't know what that is.
SM stands for supplemental motor vehicle, which is motor vehicle taxes that are billed, they're prorated, and they are for vehicles that were added onto the grand list after October 1st of that grand list year. We don't bill them in July, we bill them the following January. So
Okay.
supplemental motor vehicle taxes are payable January 1st, and they're delinquent after February 1st. So whenever you see an SM, that's what that is. We just happen to break it out. We probably collect about between $2.5 to $3 million in motor vehicle supplemental every year.
And then on the reasons, I see OOB, which is out of business, I assume. Then INF.
Hold on, let me look.
Well, let me go through the other ones. Maybe they're easier. FIN and DEA.
I think DEA is deceased.
Okay, that's what my guess was. So the only
Yeah.
other ones I'm just curious about is INF and FIN.
Yeah, I'm looking. DEA is definitely deaf.
Yeah,
I used to have it written down and I'm ashamed to say I don't know. I will look it up and get back to you. I don't remember. I'm not the one who codes it. I have to be frank with you.
okay.
Um,
All right, it's not that important. I mean, there aren't that many.
but
of
well,
them.
I really
just,
ought to know and I apologize.
I'm just curious. What
Yeah,
it would
I am
be.
too.
And most importantly, I don't see my name on the list, so I'm happy.
Well, that's a good thing.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I see two of the Millward Brown. It's like over $350,000. That's a significant amount. It seems
What
like
page are you on? What page are you on?
page 15 of 130 and page 18 of 130. They're
All right, hold
listed
on.
twice. 401 Merit 7. Cantor, Millward and Brown.
Yeah,
That's a significant, and that's an INF, and so it'd be interesting to know what the INF does stand for.
and interestingly enough, that comes up on a couple of different addresses. I happened to notice as I look through here.
But it's business personal property, right?
I don't know.
PP?
I think it's
Oh yeah,
PP,
PP,
yes.
personal property, you're right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I will find out. Those big dollar amounts, the business personal property, when they fail to file,
Right,
the assessor's office adds a penalty of 25% of the prior year's assessment. So what ends up happening is if you have a business that wasn't there and it gets what we call the non-technical term rolled over onto the subsequent year, it gets rolled over at the prior assessment and then they add another 25% on it. And if that business is gone, it's very, very troubling to us as the other end of the collection department, because we can't collect that bill and yet that amount is part of our collectible levy. So it affects our collection rate in a bad way. It's basically expecting us to collect something that's not there. And it's been an ongoing issue over many, many years, not only in Norwalk, but elsewhere in the state as well. But we have had many, many situations where we go out there and we would report back and say the business is gone. And the assessor's office is unwilling to take the account off because they haven't seen it with their own eyes. And this is a chronic issue that we have. So I will find out what the INF means, but I suspect it has something to do with that.
And that one person seems to show up quite often in subsequent years or earlier years. I noticed as I went through this, I didn't spend a lot of time going through it, but that name seemed to pop up and also had some significant numbers next to it.
I'm guessing that my delinquent collector probably knows more about it than I do, but I will report back.
I hope so.
Any other questions?
No.
Okay.
Great job. Great job.
All in favor of approving the fiscal year 2021-2022 suspense list, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions, the motion carries and the item has been approved.
Thank
you,
you.
Lisa.
You also have my regular reports. I don't know if you want, I don't know where that is on your agenda, if you want to ask me anything about that or.
It's yeah, do you want to do that? It's last, but certainly not least on the agenda. If you'd like to just give us a thumbnail.
Yeah, the thumbnail, you're gonna notice too, since you were speaking about assessment appeals, we actually ran our numbers for the month of April and we got them done today. So even though the report talks about March, at the end of March, we were at 98.82. We're now, as of the end of April, we're at 98.98. But I wouldn't be too excited about that because we've had our levy decrease by $4.6 million as a result of those assessment appeals that they were discussing. So while 98.98% collection at the end of April is great, it's not, I don't really see it as a true number because of how much of the levy got taken out. So of course our collection rate is going to go up. But as of the end of March, we were at 98.82. We collected on our tax sale that we started working on, if you recall, back in November of 2019. We collected more than $9 million on that sale. The sale is now officially over because the end of the redemption period has passed. So where we started with 248 properties, we ended up having to deed over only 5 properties, actually. All the others either paid prior to the sale or redeemed within that 6 months between the date of the sale in October and last month when we were deeding properties over. So to have only 5 properties change hands, I think is rather remarkable and proves my contention that the tax sale is a very efficient and effective means of collecting back taxes. All of the properties that deeded over owed between 6 to 8 years worth of taxes. And half of them had been in prior tax sales before, but had not received any bids, which is why they owed 8 years. So just as a sort of a recap on the sale, all of that is on the website as well. So that is over with. We are working on business personal property collection with the marshals and with tax warrants where we actually go door to door, or we go to their bank and we seize the funds on deposit in their banks. As I mentioned, we have a wage garnishment in effect. We also have the health department decline to reissue a health permit if a business owes back taxes. That's a very, very successful initiative with the help of the sanitarians. And they've been really great on that. So those are some of the kinds of things that we do. It's also, as you know, because you're setting the rates later tonight, it's time to start thinking about our July billing. So that is going to be next on our agenda is looking ahead toward June. We like to get those tax bills in the mail by the second week of June to give people a good, 8 to 9 weeks of collection cycle before they're delinquent in August. There's no extensions this year. There's no sign of the state doing anything because of COVID. I think we're kind of back to normal. But collections were good. It's just a process of having to be consistent and persistent. And that's where we look to the mayor's office, we look to the council, and we look to you to back us up when we are questioned by our constituents when they have an issue with what we're trying to do. But we do treat everybody the same. We don't make exceptions for people, and we're very, very persistent in our efforts to keep that current collection rate high so that you can set a lower mill rate. The fewer outstanding back taxes we have year to year allows you to set a higher collection rate and a lower mill rate, which equates to tax relief for every taxpayer. And that's the end of my sermon.
Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Oftentimes we don't get enough opportunity to say thank you and to praise our department heads. And when we have that opportunity, I'd like to take it. Lisa and her team are amazing. They do a wonderful job. They save the city a tremendous amount of money. I was approached by a law firm who does the tax sales and tax collections and wanted to talk to us about signing on with them. After they heard what we do and what Lisa does, they said, we can't beat that. They would take, I think, about 18% of the money they collect. Because of Lisa, we keep most of it, just the expense of having to run the tax sale. But she's also very professional. And every time I ask her a question, she provides an answer that is substantive and addresses all my concerns. So I just want to give a shout out to Lisa and her team for all the hard work that they do. They really do a tremendous job.
Thank you, Mayor.
I think we can
My
all agree
pleasure.
on. She seems to get the same response every year. I think she's accustomed to this by now because we're accustomed to her good work. So thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a resolution on page 73. Madam Clerk.
I stepped away. Did we vote on the approval?
Oh, I thought we did vote on this on the suspense list. Yeah.
If we did,
yeah, we
okay.
did vote on it.
I stepped away for a minute. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Item 2 on the other business section of the agenda is a resolution. Madam Clerk, would you mind reading that?
Resolution making.
So moved, Ed. It's Troy.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved, Madam Clerk.
Resolution making appropriations for various public improvements aggregating $38,693,091 for the fiscal year 2022 to 23 capital budget and authorizing the issuance of $38,693,091 general obligation bonds of the city to meet certain appropriations in the fiscal year 2021-23 capital budget.
Madam Clerk, will you please read the amount again? I believe you said 600,000. I may be.
38,693,000.
983.
Okay, yeah, I can, excuse me.
No, I think there was a new
Okay.
document that went around.
Yeah. And I
Yeah, there's a new document that went around.
All right, mine says 983, so there's apparently an error on my my agenda. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a $38,693,091.
Okay.
So guys, it's the correct number is the 38.9 million.
The correct number is 38.9. Okay, so I don't have.
So on the cover sheet of the agenda, the number is correct. The resolution on page 73 is not correct. That's I sent out an update around 5:15 this afternoon.
I see. That was via email. I guess I didn't download that. Okay.
Okay, so the correct amount is $38,983,540.
That's correct.
Okay,
Okay. So we don't need to reread that resolution with that number. The record reflects that that's the correct number. The item has been moved. Any discussion on that? Is there anyone here who wishes to discuss the item?
Hi, this is Chitsme Lamb from the Comptroller's Office. So
Yep.
this item, the attached revised resolution is authorizing bonding for our capital projects that were appropriated by Common Council on April 12th, 2022. So with this approval, this will allow the mayor and the CFO to go out for bonding for these projects, as it's indicated in the attached bonding authorization.
Okay. And the attached bonding authorization is found on page 73 through 80. Is that correct?
We have a revised bonding authorization that went out this afternoon, and the total amount is the $38,983,540.
Okay, but the sections, section 1, 2, section 3, etc., of what's under the resolution that we just read, pages 73 through 80, that is part of what we're taking a vote on as well, right? So,
well, on page 73, my page 73 shows 38,693,091.
right, but I think that,
Yeah.
I think the new one went out along with the new number, and that
Right.
was also included in
That's
the
correct.
rest of that document.
Yep.
Excuse me, but the addition, the new version that I got this afternoon has that same 693,091.
I thank you, Jim. I got the same update that came to the home this afternoon, the 091 number.
Is it conceivable that what's in the agenda is the incorrect number? And the actual number is the 693?
Now, I believe with Mr. Ellis and Miss Lamb, we could probably identify what the correct number is.
Would I be able to share my screen?
Yes.
That'd be great. Yeah, if you could do that. Okay.
I don't know if anybody's, okay, so this is our resolution. The revised resolution is making appropriation for various public improvement aggregating $38,983,540 for the 2022-2023 capital budget, and authorizing the issuance of $38,983,540 general obligation bonds of the city to meet certain appropriation in the 2022-2023 capital budget.
Okay.
And then if I scroll down, these are the list of our projects that were approved in the April 12th, 2022 Common Council meeting. And that totals the $38,983,540.
Okay, so that's the correct number.
Correct.
All right. So everything else is the same except that number. So is there any further discussion in connection with this item? Okay. So all in favor of adopting the resolution as read, with the exception that the number is $38,983,540. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, abstentions, the motion carries and the resolution has been adopted. Thank you, Ms. Lamb.
Thank you.
While we're giving credit out, let's give credit to our finance department, certainly Mr. Ellis, who stepped in and hit the ground running, and Ms. Lamb, who is very professional and does her job in a way that we could all be proud of. And she's very up to date and certainly aware of all the things that are going on. So we appreciate her as well.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Glad.
And we would like also to thank Lola in our finance department who helped put the books together and the budget information for us.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Lola, she was a showgirl.
Yeah, she's the straw that stirs the drink, basically, right? in the past. So thank you to her as well. All set. All right, thank you. Last but not least, approval of the fiscal year 2022-2023 operating budget and tax rates. And Tom or someone like to
Yeah,
speak on it?
excuse my voice, but I'll,
So moved again. So moved.
All right, so moved.
yeah, so what you're looking at here is our final iteration of the budget process. And this is reflective of what we call the BET decisions. So those were where we voted on and approved the 0.5% cuts from a variety of departments, and also addressed a number of open items that were still out there, including, for example, the Equity and Inclusion Officer in the Mayor's office, and some of the Park and Rec headcount requests. So in total, we had started at 414,199,000. That was the council cap. And after the 0.5% cuts from a variety of departments, as well as the funding approvals that we gave, it ended up actually being about $24,000 less than that. And that number is 414,175,000. And the reason for that is because the fire department came back with more than a 0.5% cut. It was about 24,000 more than we had asked them for. So we didn't end up coming right to the very council cap. We came in just a little bit under. So that's where we are on that summary sheet on the cover. Those were really, the changes that we talked about, those open items at the last meeting, are really the only changes between the two.
Okay.
And then subsequent pages of that are the mill rate calculations, basically the tax levy, the collectible amounts, the motor vehicle, the elderly tax relief, so on and so forth, all the various components that go into the mill rate calculation. And then the very last page of that three-page summary is where you see the mill rates by tax district, which have essentially not changed from, say, 4 to 6 weeks ago when we first saw this.
All right. Any questions?
Is this the summary? Again, I got a package this afternoon and I was told to sign the last page. And I assumed that last page was all in the packet. It turns out it was in the packet. Is this what I signed off on then?
Yeah, that last page are the mill rates. And I believe that what you're referring to is the tax bill with the mill rates by district, and they're the same numbers.
Okay.
But no, you're correct. You didn't miss it in the packet. We just finalized that tax bill this afternoon.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions?
Ed, it's Ed Abrams.
Yeah.
One question that really is a holdover from our last meeting. I'm fine with all of this, but did we ever get clarity, Mr. Mayor, on the 1.8 million for the Sono incubator and how and where that will be funded? If I missed that, I apologize.
No, that's still under discussion right now. That would be an operating budget issue. We are looking, I have a meeting with the superintendent and my financial staff tomorrow to discuss exactly how that can happen. We are very supportive of making that happen. Right now, though, there's not an appetite among the Common Council, and I understand, to increase the budget cap. But there are also opportunities, I believe, under the efficiency study to try to find some savings within the Board of Education. So my recommendation will be that we start looking at that and figuring out moving forward with the incubator and monitoring during the next fiscal year.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions?
Nope.
Lisa, you look like you have something to say, but you're afraid to say it. All right, and there being no other questions, all in favor of approving the fiscal year 2022-2023 operating budget and tax rates as set forth in the documentation that we have and as has been discussed, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the motion carries, and the operating budget and tax rates have been approved. Thank you very much. Yes, Lisa.
We're going to be sending you, each of you on the board, a document to sign because there is a formality that we have to undertake. It's called a rate bill, and it memorializes the vote that you have just taken, and it enables me to bill properly. So normally when you're meeting in person, we do this in person, but because you're all remote, we're going to send it to you either by mail or by courier. And if you would each be good enough to sign your name and then send it back to us, we will keep it for our records.
I believe that's what I signed this afternoon.
Yeah.
Ed, did you get that too?
I set the rates. Yeah, I signed the thing about the rates, but we have to vote on it. But I'm not. Is there another document that we need to sign?
That's the one.
That's the one. Okay, it was done in anticipation,
Okay.
and it would have been
Should
ripped
have it
up.
from all of us.
Had we voted no, it would have been all these signatures would have been gone. But we did that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. We're at the financial reports section of our meeting, and the first item, and probably, I guess the only real item, I guess, although the other ones are no less real, but it's Oak Hills. Is there anyone here from Oak Hills that wishes to?
Mr. Androsco is here.
Mr. Androsco?
I am here. Hello.
Hi, Joe. How are you doing? Okay, so do you want to give us a quick synopsis?
Sure. The restaurant opened mid-March, and there's still some kinks to work out, as with any restaurant opening, but it's generally going well. We had a point of sale system upgrade. I know the point of sale system is on most people's minds. It was a mandatory upgraded. They were no longer going to support the old system. So, there's a system name change from Golf Now to G1, slightly easier to say, slightly easier to write. And there were some, with any system conversion, in my experience, there's always a couple of hiccups, some complaints. Most of the customer facing ones have been resolved. There are still some small things going on there, and maybe more pertinent to this side. There were also some reporting differences. So the way the new system does financial reporting is just a little bit different, and all the templates that were set up, needed to be redesigned. So we're working through that with the vendor, and they're providing pretty good support, in the past couple of weeks. So that's kind of the operational things. March also began golf with any real volume and with normal greens fees. And so, we're starting to see that. It was closed for a portion of it. So the year-over-year comps are not quite good to use for March, but April, I can give you the preview, bounced back with a good number of rounds and solid revenue. So, we ended March with about 200,000 in cash, which is, versus prior years, extremely good. We ended with 200,000 cash and no borrowing, which is the real good point versus prior years. And year-to-date expenses, because even March expenses on the month basis were, relatively minor. Just the year-to-date number through 9 months, we were 21K lower on revenue, 55K lower on expense. So our net operating income higher by about 35,000. So a good position to be in. We expect that to augment as revenue picks up. And there may be some added expense, just timing of some, course upkeep. But overall should finish the fiscal year strong as rounds come back. I did receive a list of questions Thursday afternoon, I think from Mr. Freyer, regarding the rounds and the TOS system and how things, really operational questions. They actually dive a little bit deeper than even I as a board member prefer to get into. But I thought I don't have the answers to those. Not really enough time to turn around answers to such detailed questions. I can follow if those questions remain after this conversation concludes with some answers to those. However, I did want to just provide context for the magnitude of what we're talking about for the repayments that would occur if we included these fully in our repayment schedule. So just for the quick math, ends up being that our deal with the vendor, now the system called G1, is for each point of sale terminal, we give them 1 tea time per day. And for about the 6 months, 30 days per month, that's 4 rounds per time. And so it's 3 times 30 times 6 times 4, which is 2,160 rounds that we exchange with them for the use of their system. And, just to deal in round numbers, let's bring that up to 2,500, which is 56 rounds per month in the off season, which is actually a little generous probably. But let's say it's 2,500 rounds for the full year, off season and on season. And being generous again at $40 per round, our average right now is about 35, but let's say that maybe this skews more non-resident, which is a higher price point for us. So at $40 per round, 2,500 rounds times $40 per round, $100,000. The only thing that this is not included in now is our 1% annual golf revenue payment. And so 1% of $100,000 is $1,000. So that is theoretically what we would add to the city repayment. Now, with modest assumptions for growth of not really rounds, because we're kind of at capacity for rounds, but price per round. Just overall general, the rest of the growth of the golf industry, hopefully, modeled out that this would change the full repayment schedule of the outstanding $1,966,000 that we owe to the city from a termination date of June 2040 to April 2040. So we don't see this as something that's particularly significant, 1, to the financials of Oak Hills, or 2, to the overall repayment schedule of the city debt. And so, I just want to, as I think about some of the other numbers that were discussed in this meeting, the bond, the overall city budget, et cetera, I just wanted to kind of provide that context so that we have a sense of the significance of what we're actually talking about here. I think some of the questions, Mr. Freyer did touch on that and wanted to get closer to the numbers that I just walked through. And apologies for, not having that clear line of reasoning earlier. But I did want to just kind of provide that context and see if we still want to proceed with that discussion.
Frankly, what you're doing is you're understating your revenue by $100,000.
But it's only $1,000 to the city, I guess is the point.
It's immaterial whether it's to the city. I mean, that's a whole nother subject. The revenue of the golf course is being understated by $100,000. And you're saying that the cost of the G1 contract is $100,000?
That would be the implied amount, approximately, yeah.
Right, so that's expenses of $100,000. It should show on your financial statements.
Our financials are audited every year, and this has never been an issue.
It's probably never been explained to the auditor, but I've spent probably a good 45 years in the finance areas of various different companies. And I've never ceases to amaze me that certain people don't understand that you have to have revenues and then you have expenses. And that's how you measure the effectiveness of companies and how profitable they are. The fact that they offset in this particular case, which I could probably argue with you a little bit about, because when I looked at the average rates of greens fees, it was probably a little bit higher. The way you should be going about this is, if you're going to have a contract with somebody, they should tell you how much it's worth. Okay, what can they sell those tee times higher?
This is again an operational question.
Well, if they're selling it for higher, if they're selling those tee times for $50 or $60, then they're overcharging us, because you just said that it was worth $100,000 to have this system. Do you follow that?
Very well, yes.
It's a barter system.
I understand what you're
about
saying.
A barter system, and what I really can't understand how your accountants come in and find it okay to have a barter system.
Can I just ask that's how the Oak Hills Authority handles the point of sale system, or whatever. As it relates to us, the issue is, are we being shortchanged? Should the tee times that are bartered or sold or whatever, or transferred, are those being accounted for in our repayment schedule? That's really the issue.
I don't know, because I don't know what value that G1 puts on the cost of their system. We don't know how much it costs.
But we know how much our tee times are, and it's one tee time.
Well, wait a minute. Whoa. What Joe just explained to us was, he gave us an average greens fee. Okay, an average greens fee is what we pay for a round of golf. If we take all the revenue rounds and divide by the number or by the revenue, you get a little bit higher number. Okay, but the fact of the matter is that the G1 could sell those greens fees at $50 a round instead of $40 a round.
But how does that?
That means that they're charging, and they're charging us. And basically, we're paying more money for that, because we should be able to. If they can sell it for $50, why can't we sell it for?
But we can't just randomly sell tee times for a higher sum than what we do.
Are we giving G1 the residence rates, or are we giving them the a non-resident rate that we charge them for?
I think Joe said that it's $40 per round, right? It's $40. Well, that's the average. So it's $40 per round. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah,
yes, Mr. Mayor.
I believe the only issue that we have here is, are we being compensated for the barter rounds? Because we get we get a certain amount of money for every round that Oak Hills has. So as Mr. Freyer states, there's $100,000. We should, and as Mr. Andrasco states, so we should probably be getting an extra amount of money based on those barter rounds. And if we're not getting it, why are we not getting it?
Right. So the $100,000 additional monies, that's at 1%. That's the overall sum. That's $1. That's at $1,000. And then the number each round is $2 per round, correct?
Right.
So
$2.05 this year and 5 cents higher every year.
Right. And you indicated that there were 2,500 rounds in the course of a year of off season. So there should be times $2, correct?
Yeah, so
More
that's
or less.
5,000.
Yes,
5,000, yes, right.
So we're
5,000.
talking about an average of $6,000 to the city.
Yeah, and I agree with Mr. Freyer that every round, regardless if it's a barter round or not, we should be getting the amount of money that we're supposed to get per round.
And I believe that, Mr. Androsco, didn't you indicate at the last meeting, one of the meetings, that you were going to recommend to your board that they, in fact, provide that compensation? So in addition, so the 1% plus the $2 per round, which at this point,
Yes,
just,
right,
given the
yeah.
numbers would, yeah.
And retroactives. So that was included in the March payment that we made in April.
Okay,
and
so
it'll be
you're doing
included in
that.
the April payment that we make in May. And we'll do a retroactive payment to July 1st, a one-time true up.
And having said all that, that pushes up the repayment to the city by 2 months or so. Is that more or less?
No. So including the 2,500 at the per round rate advances it much more. I was talking specifically to if we were to, I guess, somehow impute the revenue implied by the rounds that G1 resells and add that to our 1% payment at the end of each year. This would be the $1,000 extra that we pay this year, and that would cause our repayment schedule to advance by 2 months.
But then the other $2 per round, imputing that amount, that's $6,000 a year. That would push it. That would push the repayment up a bit further, correct?
Oh yeah. So before we did that, we were sometime in 2043, I think.
Okay. So does that make sense? Is that what the board has resolved to do, or not this board, but the
authority?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So we've decided to pay the per round for basically all rounds that get played at Oak Hills.
Okay.
The contract is for revenue rounds, and we're just kind of going beyond that and saying, let's include the POS rounds, even though it doesn't generate revenue technically, because there is the offset to expenses. And the only thing that can offset expense is, well, contra expense or income. So I do understand the financials somewhat. The thing that I'm arguing right now is insignificant to the financials, is the one adding the 1% payment.
Got it. Okay.
Well, but the fact of the matter is that the $40 that you suggested is the average, is not the average. If we look at the actuals on the latest information that you sent out, you had almost 24,000 rounds at actual golf revenue of $1,251,000. That's about $52 a round.
Sure, but those are not the right numbers to use. You should
Those are
use
not the right
revenue
numbers to
rounds.
use. They're the numbers that you have in your financial statements. That's the average. If I take the average number of golf rounds, revenue rounds, divided by the golf revenue, that's.
All right, Jim,
that's
let's because I think Joe has a disagreement about that. Do you just want to go and explain why you disagree with that?
I'm just looking at what they sent out.
And I'm just asking Joe how he thinks that is not the way to look at it.
Well, the correct way to look at it is revenue rounds and dollars per revenue round, like total dollars of revenue rounds. And that number is trained a little bit higher, right, up on the page. So the 1288193 is total revenue. It includes ID cards, carts. These are things that are not included. So the total dollar revenue rounds is 833,109, and we've gone to the trouble of calculating the average below the number that you're focused on, 1288193. And that is dollars revenue per revenue round, which is $34.78. Last year, it was $33.62.
I'm not, this is on page, this is the March 31st.
This is page 98 of 135 in the agenda.
This is something that came this afternoon. It's not in the agenda. It came.
Just so you know, Jim,
Perhaps
Joe,
we can go to page
we did
98
not-
of 135.
we didn't get this until later, Joe, so we don't have the number on the, this was inserted later on, so that number that you said.
That page number.
We don't know the number page, it's not on our handout. We were given later.
Okay, so the header of this one is Oak Hill's Sales Analysis March 2022 Fiscal Report.
No, because you're talking about actual, you're talking about March. I don't know.
Let me see if I can figure out
Yeah,
which
it's
page
the
of
last
Oak
page.
Hills it
It's
is.
the last page of the document that we received. Not the, yeah, the last page. It's a double-sided page.
Yeah, so I guess the front, if you can retain which side is the front of that, but it will say fiscal report, not calendar report.
Excuse me, Joe, can you share it? So we can see.
If you'll allow me to.
Sure.
And I'm just going off the one that I pulled off the city. This is a good suggestion, though. Now I can just point to the numbers. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So these are the revenue rounds of 24,000, which you correctly identified. These are the dollars of revenue associated with those rounds, 833,000. This is the number that you were trained on, which includes a significant revenue from carts, ID cards, those sorts of things. And this is the number that we should be looking at, 3478, which is the average revenue per revenue round. So this is just the golf revenue, the greens fees revenue.
But to my point, the G1 can sell those quite a bit above that 35, and I would dare say they probably go way above that 35. Don't they sell those? They can sell them for any price they want, can't they?
But how does that affect us, Jim?
Because it's revenue we're losing. Because
It's not revenue we're losing. It's not revenue that's coming to us. It's revenue that's going to the
Because what I'm
POS
saying
company.
is, what I'm saying is that we don't know what they're charging us. We're bartering. We're not getting charged. When you go out and have your house painted, you ask somebody to give you a bill or give you an estimate. This is how much it's going to cost you to paint your house. Okay, and you got it. You say, okay, now I know how much I'm going to pay for it. But we don't know what we're paying G1. That's my
But we
whole
know
point.
how much a revenue round is. The average
But
revenue round is
But
30.
Ed, it's immaterial. Look,
Why is that immaterial? Because the
because you
average
don't
revenue
know.
round is,
It's a barter. You're bartering something, okay?
we're paying
You're not in the
$2
barter
per,
business.
Oak Hills is
Why-
paying us
you know, I
$2
see this-
per, Oak Hills is paying us $2 per round. Whether
Ed.
that round is $100, $1,000, or $10, they're paying us $2 per round.
Ed,
So the Oak Hills Authority has agreed to pay us $2 for each of those rounds. In addition to that, we're getting 1% of the overall revenue for that year, which includes now the approximately $100,000 of revenue that is attributable to what we have bartered away to the POS system, regardless of whether or not they charge 16 times that amount.
No,
Because that's
we're not
not
including that. We're that's not included in the 1% payment.
But
We're
you've
not
indicated
including
that you will be including that, though, isn't that correct?
I don't know.
No. So there's two repayment structures. There's the per round rate. We've included
Right.
it in the per round rate.
Right.
The 1% payment is on total golf revenue,
Right,
right? So it would include all of these items and
right,
be based on this number when the full fiscal year is done.
right. Okay.
Excuse me. This is not that the 100,000 that I'm saying is implied
Yeah,
generously
right.
is not included in this 833, not included in this 1288. And
I
my
agree.
argument is the gymnastics that we'd have to do and the renegotiations that we'd have to do with contract and the fact that this is ubiquitous throughout the golf industry. This is an insignificant and immaterial amount to the financials of the city and quite technically to Oak Hills at the end of the day.
Because it's a net 1,000 to the city.
It's a net 1,000 to the city and a net 2 months in 2040, at which point we would end up paying the city back slightly earlier.
Okay.
After we've already taken a step to advance that by, I don't remember perfectly, but I think it was approximately 2.5 years, which was the inclusion of the 2,500 rounds at the per round rate.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. So the only difference now is either 5,000 or 6,000 per year, depending if you include that $100,000.
Decent way to think about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's $6,000 to the Board of Estimate. I really don't see how anything else really matters to the city. But I guess Jim has a different view of that. What does everyone else think? Because I don't know what.
If I may just add one more point there, this was the case when the contract was negotiated, when this loan repayment was amended. This was the way expenses and revenue were being handled. And there was a conscious decision to make the 1% payment based on golf revenue, knowing that this was the case.
I got you. Okay. That's a fair point.
I don't think it's a fair point at all. Because because the people that negotiated didn't know how it worked.
But that's not the way contracts work.
In fairness.
I mean, contracts work with, people negotiating whether or not they overlooked something or they didn't know something. That's not really the way contracts work. A contract is a contract. You're presumed to do your due diligence. Apparently that wasn't done, or it was done and people said it's fine. But you can't undo a contract because somehow years later you realize that you were operating under a mistaken fact. Particularly when that mistaken fact nets you $1,000 or $6,000.
How long has it?
Difference?
How many months have we tried to get an answer to this same question until tonight?
But we can't go back to when the contract was written to understand what efforts were made then. It could be that they understood perfectly. It could be that they understood perfectly what the facts were then.
But people on the Golf Authority couldn't explain it to us.
Because these people weren't there when the contract was entered into. The point is, we can't rewrite a contract.
They just negotiated a new contract, a new agreement with G1.
Well, they did because they have a contract to renegotiate, but they don't have to renegotiate this contract, I don't believe.
All right, listen, we're not getting anywhere with this.
If I could ask a question, Mr. Andrasco, what is the total amount we pay relative to G1 having this contract? Is it total barter rounds or do we pay them cash as well?
No, we pay them in rounds only. There's no cash.
Rounds only. So this is from my understanding, this is a common way of doing business. We give them X number of rounds to barter, for barter. They can charge whatever they want. It doesn't make a difference to us, but we still get the money back from Oak Hills Authority for each round played. Correct?
Correct.
So, I mean, this is a common way of doing business, from my understanding. We just give them X number of rounds for performing the service that we've asked them to perform.
Mr. Mayor, I must say this, Troy and Jim, I listen, I agree with Jim 100%. We've been asking this question since month after month after month, and it's really almost embarrassing, the responses that we received. Okay. Now, you're saying something, Mr. Mayor, that I don't know that it's in the industry that's the standard. You're
I
going to
do.
tell me that nobody for Golf One, they don't charge a bill to anyone, Joe? They don't say, okay, we're not going to take rounds. We're just going to charge you $5,000 a month. Does that never happen? Is that what you're saying, Joe?
That's right.
But
I
Troy,
cannot
even if
say
that were
that's
the
never
case,
happened. Of course, I don't deal in absolutes.
even if that were the case, Troy, it's still a net 5,000 or 6,000 to the city. Isn't that the bottom line?
Yeah.
Regardless of what they charge per round, we have to go with what the average round is. Let's say that's a sort of an easy way of
And it does
looking
mean
at it.
something, because why wouldn't we just keep those rounds and pay them a bill? What if we can charge more?
Because what's the
for those
difference?
rounds?
What is the difference to us? Because to us, we still get $2 per round.
Right.
But there's a 1% we're not getting.
Well,
Of the
the 1% is
total.
$1,000. I mean, if comes down to $1,000 a year.
And the other thing I might add, if we didn't have these discussions as an oversight we are looking at, they were not charging for the $2 a round for the unlimited players last year.
Yeah, exactly. So now that
So
we
I'm happy. I'm saying I'm happy about this.
Yeah.
Our oversight committee, we're able to at least get that in.
Yeah, and I'm happy that the Oak Hills Authority is making money for the very first time in years, and have been for the last 3 years or so, that we've had these discussions, that the Oak Hills Authority has stepped up and has agreed to include all those rounds as revenue rounds, even though there's a dispute or a disagreement as to whether or not that was anticipated when the contract was written. And we've come down to now, after it's all said and done, after the band stops playing and the banners come down, it comes down to $1,000 per year that we're arguing about, which to me doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Well, $1,000, I think makes a lot of sense, and I think that they owe us $1,000 if that's what the number is. Okay.
All right.
Nevertheless, I am never going to convince you, Ed, of what it is. And obviously, if that's the way you feel, that's the way the majority of the people feel, fine. I'm going to let it go. Okay.
No, I don't disagree. I think we need everything that's owed to us, but we also have to understand that bartering is a very efficient and effective way to help the Oak Hills market their product, and also allow us to still get the money that the barter rounds, the number of barter rounds.
I've got to disagree with you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, that's why we have this meeting. That's why we have this conversation.
Yes, and we're having the conversation, and I disagree that it's a good way to do it. I mean, we went through this when we first talked about barter rounds. We said, well, it was if the bathroom was broken and a couple of plumbers came in, they fixed the bathroom, and then we gave them a round of golf, and that was great. So maybe that's very efficient to do it that day, and we don't have to go through a lot of record keeping to get it. But the bathrooms were broken 3 months later, So
yeah, but Jim, that's not a fair comparison, because we're talking about a POS system that apparently it is because we have no other expert that has said otherwise. It appears to be the industry standard, whereas giving a barter round to someone who fixes a toilet is not an industry standard.
I can't believe it's an industry standard, because first of all, any company that's selling this, how does this company stay in business? How do they show revenue? They show revenue because they barter something?
We've been doing this for a very long time, and no one has the answer to that question. We could easily look it up too. We could decide, okay, let's research it, and let's say if it's an industry standard or not. But the point is, it doesn't matter one way or the other, because we're still getting the $2 per round. And as far as we're concerned, that's our mission, is to get every dollar that we're owed. That's really our mission, not running the Oak Hills Authority.
I cannot agree more strongly with Ed than with what he just said. Guys, this is not our purview.
But let me just ask one question. Mr. Andrasco, if we didn't provide barter rounds for the service that this company provides, what would they be charging us, if or give me an estimate as to what they would be charging?
The best estimate that I can give you is what the average income they would get from those rounds is per year, and I'll give it on a per year basis, which if I use the $35 kind of more fair number, that's our average rate, would be 2,500 rounds at $35 a round, which is 87,500.
And what is the service they provide for us?
So they manage our entire point of sale system, which is, integral to a retail establishment. So it allows us to basically do transactions.
Do we do it, so do we do it on their equipment or our equipment?
Again, this is a very operational question.
Well, no, it's a simple
I'm going to
question.
give you an answer. Right, but it's extremely operational. It's a simple question to ask. It's very deep into operations, which is not really the role of a board. As I've served on other boards, it's pretty deep. But my understanding, and I'll go confirm it, is that it's a rented POS system. So we don't own that point of sale system.
Do we
The
rent
terminals.
We rent the POS
It's
system?
part of the contract.
Joe, let me just say this, and please, I'd ask every month, talk to Paul, the pro, okay? I was in there at the beginning of the month, and there's boxes of equipment that came from G1, of computers. Ask him whether they're leased or purchased. I thought he said, just clarify with him, all right? So there is hardware involved in this, okay?
Gentlemen,
Well, why
are we
is
the
it-
Oak Hills
why does
Authority
any of
Board
that
or are we
matter?
the Board of Estimate and Tax? We are
No.
way out of our purview.
There you go.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Let me ask you another
I
question.
disagree.
I
Why-
disagree.
I'm sorry,
I
you can
disagree, too.
disagree, Jim, but look at what our mission
Why,
statement is.
then don't
Ed,
bother,
we're an
don't bother,
oversight committee. We're overseeing them. What are you saying?
don't
Our
there's
sit,
oversight is on the revenue due back to the city. The
And
Oak
that's
Hills
what we're
Authority has
talking
been
about.
very, very, very cooperative in that regard during at least the time that I have been on the Board of Estimate and Tax. They have willingly renegotiated and added things back that were not in the original repayment contract. And that is our oversight. Are we as the city getting the revenue back from the loan that we provided to the Oak Hills Authority? Our oversight is not about how they run their day-to-day operation. If we want to do that, I would have us join the Oak Hills Authority Board.
Ed, but if we didn't say anything, they would not be charging for those unlimited rounds.
the thing is,
and
let's
that
accept yes
part
or no.
of the oversight is our job, identifying
Okay.
rounds that should
Okay.
be revenue classified.
Here's
Okay.
one
Getting
recommendation.
into whether they lease or buy their POS system, out of bounds, guys.
no, it's
I
not.
also would like, if Mr. Andrasco can provide this, why don't we just have all the members of the BET receive a copy of the contract so that we understand totally what the issues are, what the responsibilities are, and the whole relationship between Oak Hills Authority and a vendor.
And the vendor or an us, like the contract with the vendor or the contract with the city? The contract with the vendor.
Vendor. Between
Vendor.
Oak Hills Authority and the vendor.
All right.
I misunderstand that was already
Copy of that
furnished, but
contract,
yes.
Then
of
we
course
can clear up any questions that we have. But I agree with the two Eds, I guess, that
Well, two ends are better than one.
the only issue that we have is, are we being compensated for all the rounds being played at Oak Hills? And I agree also that until the question was asked, we weren't. Now we need to make sure that we are. So if we barter away X number of rounds, we need to make sure that we're being compensated according to the agreement for the number of rounds that we barter away and the percentage.
Yeah. And I think that's really our mission.
And I hope I was clear. There's an implication made that we are not paying back everything that's due to the city. We are doing it a different way with different accounting would advance that by 2 months. So every penny owed to the city is going to be paid back about 5 years ahead of the schedule. This is projected, so I can't guarantee that. But the end of the contract is end of fiscal 45, and this would be paid back end of fiscal 41 or 40.
And I also have to say that this original agreement, going way back, was structured in a way that almost made it impossible for Oak Hills to succeed. And we're trying to fix that. We're trying to make it a situation where Oak Hills is sustainable on their own, and that they've paid back every penny that the city has laid out or that the city has given. And I believe we're doing everything possible to make that happen.
And I don't know how it happened, but I don't know how you guys turned around a losing proposition, or at least an enterprise where you would go $200,000 deep into your line of credit year in, year out to a $200,000 surplus at the end of the season. I don't really know how that happened, but somehow it happened. And I applaud the Oak Hills Authority for making that turnaround and for putting it on sound footing. And I appreciate how cooperative the Oak Hills Authority has been, and how we are now recouping revenues from rounds that there was some disagreement as to whether or not there was such a thing as a non-revenue round. But I appreciate that the Oak Hills Authority has stepped up and has included all rounds in the repayment schedule. So I don't know what more we can ask of the Oak Hills Authority than what they've done.
Joe, I would just like to say, Joe, I please don't take anything I said personally. I'm not, you've tried to get as many answers as possible for us. And I am not trying to hang out the authority to dry. The only thing I'm trying to get to is that in my experience in doing working for fairly large companies, working as a consultant for very small startup companies, that there are certain ways to do business, and there's certain ways that that you should be handling contracts and such. I'm only trying to look out for the best for the authority, just asking questions. And if I could help in any way, I would be more than happy to sit down with you guys and go through it and give you my suggestions on how to squeeze more money out of that place. And that's all. You've done a great job. Don't get me wrong. I am tickled pink the way that you guys have turned the situation around there. And I'm one of the biggest proponents of it. I talk about it to some of your members of your board and all the time, and tell them what a great job you guys are doing. So please don't take it personally. I'm just trying to get to the bottom of some things.
And I agree, Jim, these discussions have to take place. We get it. If we don't question, if we don't get answers, then we're losing not control, but we're losing sight of what's going on and what's not going on. And I think Joe has done a great job of coming here on a monthly basis and trying to explain to us the things that are going on. And, as I said, I don't think anybody questions the fact that we need answers and we want answers. And like Mr. Abrams has said, there are certain things that are our responsibility, but the operational things belong to the authority. But we can always seek the answers that we're ask the questions that we're seeking the answers to.
So does that settle this, or do we need to take a vote? I'm not even sure what the question is at this point, since this is just a sort of an informational thing.
I think this is informational. I don't think there's a need for a vote.
Yeah.
But I just think, obviously, in order to make sure that everything is moving forward, and this is a a situation where we've got an investment in Oak Hills that we want to make sure our investment is moving forward and that we're getting the return on the investment. And I appreciate the fact that Joe is here every month giving us the answers that we're seeking. And again, sometimes it's difficult to ask the questions, but they need to be asked.
I think someone's running a sink or something. Okay, so I think that's it. There's other stuff there's other informational stuff. If anyone has a question about the year-to-date capital budget report, etc., speak now or forever hold your peace. I guess no one does. Okay.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Good night, all.
Good night.